Modification of Crops by Felisa Ponce de Leon. Here we're going to start off with the introduction. What are GM crops? Advantages of GM crops, disadvantages of GM crops, the future for GM crops, world consumer views, farmer views, and our conclusion. Introduction. This report will look at and outline the different views of genetic modification of crops from farmers and consumer. The effects on the environment will also be discussed, such as the damage to plants and insects, as well as the effects on soil. The purpose of this report is to have an overall insight of how and why genetically modified crops are used and whether it is beneficial to produce them. Genetically modified crops are foods that have gone through characteristic changes artificially to make an improvement in their quality, such as their size, color, and their taste, and to improve a higher yield of crop. There are many different advantages and disadvantages to this, and these will be looked at in my report. What are genetically modified crops? Genetic modification is the genetic change in characteristics through modern biotechnology. Biotechnology is the use of living things to create products. For many years, farmers across the world have genetically modified crop plants to improve their characteristics such as their taste, size, color, and their resistance to diseases. This ensures farmers produce the best yields of crops. GM crops are produced by selecting specific genes from specific species of crops to make the ultimate produce. For example, rice can be genetically modified to contain higher amounts of vitamin A, called golden rice. In agriculture, genetic engineering allows simple genetic traits to be transferred to crop plants from wild relatives, other distantly relatives, or virtually any other organism. Disadvantages of GM crops. GM crops contain compounds in them that can be hazardous to the consumer, therefore questioning the safety of these crops as they could be toxic. GM crops contribute to the reduction of biodiversity in agriculture. This is because plant breeders have less diversity available to breed and create different breeds of crops. This is an economical problem, also as the farmers will have less to produce and sell. Also, GM crops could lead to an increase of allergenicity, as some GM crops contain amino acids and properties which are classed as allergens, contributing to the unsafe aspects to the consumer. GM crops use less herbicides, which other herbicides will be used in replacement, which could be so toxicant that will kill many plants, birds, and living organisms. This shows that GM crops can lead to harming the environment as harmful chemicals are used to produce them. Another disadvantage is that the genes that are put together to produce the GM crops could transfer to pests that attract to the plant, meaning pests could become resistant to the pesticides as well as the crops are. This means the pesticides become inefficient and crops will get destroyed. The future for genetically modified crops. It is estimated to take from 20 to 40 years for there to be an entire acceptance of GM crops by consumers. This could reduce genetically modified crops production as there is not a great market in the GM crop industry. Until GM crops are fully accepted, the market will not grow. Consumers fear the negatives that follow in the production of crops, and scientists are going to try and improve any complications that occur by this. Change could happen in many years to come. This information is based off of my research. World consumer views. Over the last 10 years, consumers in the United States have raised alarm over GM crops. Many consumers believe that their food should not contain additives or chemicals as it is not natural and meant for the human diet. However, some consumers choose the cheapest option, and most cheap produce contains pesticides and additives due to their extension of shelf life. This comes to play in a very huge role with organic fruit. I love organic fruits, veggies, just because I know that there's no pesticides, there's nothing being genetically modified, and I, being a consumer, have bought genetically modified food, plants or vegetables, fruits, and it does not taste the same. Obviously, it is much more rich when it is organic. And for an example, I feel the same way with chicken eggs. I get them straight out from my coop, and I can just taste the vitamins, how healthy, and I honestly feel much more fueled than how I would with an egg that is genetically modified. The production of GM crops has had a negative effect on many consumers. This is due to the alleged health concerns that follow the consumption of GM crops. I believe that GM crops are not widely accepted and the consumers' views are predominantly negative. Farmers' views. Farmers are upbeat about genetically modified crops, according to new research funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. This research council is a very research council. They have brought up many facts that have helped support farmers and consumers as well. Some farmers' interests lie in whether the GM crops can help their produce become more profitable to them and attack a wider market. Therefore, they believe that because GM crops are produced of certain perfection and offer a better quality, the consumption will increase, raising their income. This making the use and consumption of GM crops an admirable option. Of course, in the end, it's all about money. But if you're a consumer, it's about your health and what you're consuming. So this is the conflict that arises between left and right. And I feel like it'll always be there because nobody wants to genetically modify fruits and veggies, of course, unless you are a farmer in order to produce more and sell more. The conclusion. Although crop production has increased crop production significantly to provide the requirements for rising population, it is very clear that the biotechnology GM crops have proved too many challenges, such as their environmental negative effects and the reduction of biodiversity, to have the full acceptance of consumers. Consumer knowledge is limited in the details of production of GM crops, and this could contribute to the lack of development of the biotechnology in the future. However, there are many advantages to the production of GM crops and the development, as it can provide a stable food supply for developing countries, as well as offering a sustainable way of food production. GM crops are cost effective to farmers as better quality crops can be produced and guaranteed. For GM crops to have a future in development and for the scientific procedures to improve, consumers need to accept them. Overall, the general attitude towards genetically modified crops is negative. The farmers' opposing views plays a strong part as they are the producers of the crops, but without consumers there is no business to play on. GM crops need to be improved significantly to meet consumer requirements and to also provide a safer consumption and production to consumers to the environment. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. In my opinion, yes, it is very important for the consumer needs to be required, and they need to be met because it is what we are consuming. Of course, there has to be some way in order to make these crops much more healthier and genetically modify them. For example, how you cut off roses in order for them to be preserved much more. Let's say there's a plant of 3 roses, you cut off 2 and you leave 1. That 1 flower is getting all the nutrients. This is just my perspective, and I feel like that could work. Of course, it would take much longer, but it is a way that I think farmers should consider. Thank you.